not requiring appointments at some sites, working to extend hours at locations to 8 p.m., and the possibility of a 24-hour site for those who cannot get vaccinated during the day.
We always knew at some point we would, the folks very motivated would get it. We think there's still plenty of San Diegans who are open and willing to get a vaccine. We just have to work a little bit harder to make it a little bit easier to access.
Overall, San Diego County is about halfway toward its goal of having 75% of residents 16 and over fully vaccinated by mid-July.
That goal population is just for the 16 years of age and older. We will have to readjust and modify that when vaccine is available for the population of 12 to 15 years of age.
Officials have also aligned local health orders with new CDC guidance that says those vaccinated do not need to wear masks outside unless in large crowds. In Mission Beach, we saw lots of people without face coverings and some that still had them.
This is the guidance that's out there, and we trust that the overwhelming majority of folks will follow it. Look, I get there's a little frustration. Folks are like, I got vaccinated. Why do I still need to wear my mask at all?
Outreach efforts for youth are also being increased too. And Supervisor Nora Vargas says pilot programs that help vaccinate hard-hit South Bay communities are now being implemented in the North County.
We're going to continue to ask all of you to share with your family and friends. Ask them to get their vaccines.
At the county's 20 or so vaccination sites, there are now a limited number of doses set aside each day for walk-ups. But other sites like superstations and healthcare providers are still requiring appointments. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
And one of those super sites that Matt mentioned is at the Del Mar Fairgrounds. And this week, its operator, Scripps Health, announced it will expand capacity. Up to 10,000 people can be served per day as long as supply keeps up. The Del Mar super site has seen several closures in recent weeks due to slowdowns in the supply chain. At the national level, we're closing in on 100 million Americans fully vaccinated. Even though vaccines have been around for months, there is still a large number of people who are still hesitant. Alexandra Field reports on some prominent voices among them.
It's even better than what you would have expected.
In the real world, the effectiveness of COVID vaccines is surpassing already high expectations set by clinical trials.
That's the reason why you hear all of us in the public health sector essentially pleading with people to get vaccinated.
Nationwide, the average number of new infections, the lowest it's been in 5 weeks. The average number of COVID-related deaths, the lowest it's been since last summer.
The numbers are coming down, and I believe as they come down, you will see more liberal guidelines.
It's happening already, but not fast enough for many who got their vaccines and want to get back to normal much faster.
They haven't really gone far enough. They really need to tell Americans that if you are vaccinated, you are immune.
Why put any restraints on the vaccinated?
Well, let me roll it up this way. Everything you do is safer if you're vaccinated. Everything. Go to a wedding, go to a restaurant, hang out with friends, go to a barbecue, go to work. Everything you do is much, much safer if you've been vaccinated. If you haven't been vaccinated, those things are still dangerous.
Even so, many states lifting mask mandates, almost half the U.S. without, even before the CDC issued new guidance saying masks aren't necessary outdoors for the vaccinated, except in very large crowds. Louisiana dropping its mask mandate today. Masks will still be a must in places like schools and government buildings. The governor of Tennessee declaring the end of the COVID-19 health emergency, with thousands of new cases there daily and just 25% of the state's population fully vaccinated. In California, Disneyland opening its gates to California residents only for the first time in more than a year during a soft open. Los Angeles County is moving to its lowest level for restrictions, and New York City now planning to lift curfews for restaurants and bars next month. All this while the White House takes its campaign into overdrive, encouraging more people to get their shots. That, as some popular voices share opinions at odds with the medical experts' advice.
If you're a healthy person and you're exercising all the time and you're young and you're eating well, I don't think you need to worry about this.
And then you'll pass the infection on to someone else, who might pass it on to someone else, who might really get seriously ill and might die. So you have to put a little bit of societal responsibility in your choices. And that's why I disagree with Mr. Rogan.
That was Alexandra Field reporting. You can follow the local progress in vaccinating San Diegans. It's part of our vaccine dashboard at kpbs.org. We also have a map where you can find a vaccine location in your area. You can get to the KPBS vaccine dashboard by clicking the vaccines link that you can find on our homepage. Half of San Diego's population is now fully vaccinated, but there are many who haven't followed through in getting a second dose. Jacob Ayer looks at how receiving a partial or even a full vaccination changes COVID-19 risks and the infection rates.
Now that over half of San Diego adults have received at least their first COVID-19 vaccine shot, another question arises. What does it mean to be fully vaccinated against the novel coronavirus? Dr. Rodney Hood has been at the forefront of the county's effort to vaccinate San Diegans. He says risks for infection still exist, but they will continue to go down as more people get their shots.
Yes, it is possible that you can still get exposed and get the COVID infection, but it's usually very mild. So far, those that have been fully vaccinated have been shown to have no significant hospitalizations and no death.
Hood says it's also important to note that those who have gotten the vaccine are far less likely to spread COVID-19 to others, even if they have the virus in their system.
Being vaccinated also markedly decreases the risk of transmitting asymptomatic disease because the viral load is so low. So even if you did get infected, transmitting it becomes much less.
However, there is concern that as time goes on, some COVID variants could evade the current vaccines. Hood says booster shots might be coming in the fall that will provide further protection.
We now know that the immunity that you get is very good up to 6 months and probably longer. How much longer, we don't know. Estimation is 9 to 12 months. So some are speculating that at that period of time, a booster shot may be necessary.
San Diego County's current goal is to fully vaccinate 75% of its population to reach herd immunity, which Hood expects to happen by late fall. If the variants become a problem, he says it might take a higher percentage. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
The U.S. will restrict travel from India starting Tuesday, May 4th. The country is dealing with a major surge in COVID-19 cases with thousands of deaths per day. This picture shows some of the medical supplies being sent to India from the United States. President Joe Biden says it will continue to do what it can to help, such as sending more vaccines. But health groups are calling for the U.S. to do much more by waiving vaccine patents. As Max Rivlin-Nadler reports, a local congressman is being criticized for his resistance.
San Diego Congressman Scott Peters has opposed a push to waive the intellectual property rights for the vaccines made by companies like Moderna and Pfizer.
Support the TRIPS waiver.
A move protesters who gathered outside his La Jolla office say could save millions of lives around the world if poorer countries can manufacture generic versions. Will Jamil Wiltsko is an organizer with the California Trade Justice Coalition. He says that President Biden should issue what's known as a TRIPS waiver.
If we do not support this TRIPS waiver, if countries are not able to produce the vaccine, we're going to continue to have more and more deaths and more Zoom funerals.
Over 400 organizations, including Doctors Without Borders and Human Rights Watch, have called on the U.S. to issue the waiver. But Peters, whose district is home to many biotech companies, says the issue isn't trade secrets, it's production capacity.
It's a matter of producing and distributing and administering vaccines that this is a side issue for. You have to construct facilities, establish supply chains. That's what takes time.
Peters says by lifting intellectual property protections, the U.S. could be giving out secrets behind mRNA technology.
That technology can be the basis for cancer cures and other innovations that we want to be American. So this is not the impediment to getting vaccines out. This is an attempt to get a hold of this technology, including Russia and China. And we want America to be in the lead. There's no reason to sacrifice that in the interest of getting vaccines out, because it's not an obstacle.
The request for the waiver originally came from India, which has seen a deadly explosion of cases in recent weeks. Yesterday, it recorded over 300,000 new cases.
Nobody is no more than 20 hours away by plane, anywhere in the world. We're all neighbors, whether we want to be or not.
The Biden administration has so far resisted the request to issue the TRIPS waiver. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
Public school enrollment is down across the state, and that is especially the case for English learning students in San Diego and throughout California. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong spoke with experts and educators about this decline and how it could harm school districts.
The number of English learners enrolled in public schools statewide dropped by about 8% this school year, which is the largest drop in the past 5 years. In San Diego, the drop was even more dramatic at 12%. Experts say the decline can be largely explained by economic conditions that have been worsened by the pandemic. Students whose first language isn't English are more likely to come from low-income families who were hit hard during the pandemic year. Jorge Cuevas Antillon is the district advisor for curriculum and instruction at the San Diego County Office of Education.
There are a lot of folks who are being priced out. Rents are still not affordable or controllable. I know there are research pieces out there on affordability in the country showing that our region of the state, of the country, is one of the most unaffordable for people who are working class or the working poor.
Among large San Diego County districts, the Chula Vista Elementary School District had the greatest drop in English learner enrollment. Overall enrollment dropped by about 3% at the district, while English learner enrollment dropped by about 19%. One reason for the big drop in Chula Vista could be that more students have mastered the language and no longer qualify as English learners, but others may have just fallen through the cracks, especially during the pandemic. Lelaine Perez is the district's executive director for English learners.
Now this year, not only in our school district, but across the nation, registration process occurred online. And so there are a lot of different challenges that could impede how we accurately can identify those English learners.
Educators across the county agree that while the number of English learners is smaller, they'll need extra attention to recover academically after a year of distance learning. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
And enrollment is also taking a hit at America's colleges and universities. The current semester is the worst yet during the pandemic. The National Student Clearinghouse Research Center found undergrad enrollment down nearly 6% compared to last year. Those numbers are for the spring semester. Community colleges, which are usually more affordable, saw an 11% drop. Grad school is a different story, where enrollment is slightly up. The pandemic will impact our mental health long after it's finally over, especially for the young people experiencing significant life events virtually. Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us about one group of City Heights teens looking to reach out and support one another in a time of distance.
Kept apart during the pandemic, teenagers across the country have felt isolated, missing vital life events like their senior year in high school or first year in college. Advocates for Change Today, a group of youth organizers committed to addressing substance abuse and mental health issues in the City Heights community, is trying to bridge the gaps that have sprung up and where despair might have set in.
Over the years, we've been trying to run campaigns that just reach to people about youth and drug use because that seems to be overlooked. And I, as a member of my community, I'm tired of that.
A Zoom-based town hall for youth called Together by Your Side brings together speakers from the National Alliance of Mental Illness and the San Diego Boys to Men Mentoring Network.
It'd be nice to at least have people know that they're not alone, especially during this pandemic, because I know we all have our own problems, our own lives, and we just have to get through it. But we also got to remember that we're not by ourselves. We're not all suffering alone. We all have each other to look after.
The youth organizers have been working on the programming for months, helping to generate the next generation of community leaders. Rocio Hernandez was one of the founders of the group over a decade ago. She now works at Say San Diego, an organization focused on the well-being of young people.
We are looking to you for you to one day take over the group and keep the legacy going as it's been done with me. So we encourage them all the time that you can be in this role in the future because they really are leaders.
The hope is next year, a similar town hall can be in person, as the world, and young people especially, become closer to one another once again. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
For many, rent is due this weekend and money is available for San Diegans struggling to pay. But some of those who need help the most are not applying for it. KPBS reporter John Carroll tells us about the tremendous outreach effort to keep families from being evicted.
Thanks to federal and state COVID relief programs, the San Diego Housing Commission has a lot of money available to help people struggling to pay rent, about $83 million.
To provide past due rent, past due utilities, and upcoming rental assistance.
Azucena Valladolid is the Vice President of Rental Assistance for the San Diego Housing Commission. She's very much aware of stats like this. Latinx people make up 57% of all renters in California, but only 35% have applied for rental assistance statewide.
We are still looking at ways to improve the number of applications that we're receiving, specifically from the Latino community.
Valladolid says the Housing Commission is leaving no stone unturned with targeted outreach to the community.
Advertisements in English and in Spanish on both TV and radio, advertisements in Spanish community newspapers, Spanish postcards to 170,000 households throughout the city of San Diego, Spanish inserts in both the City Public Utilities Department and SDG&E utility bills, posted advertisements on the MTS system. We've even contracted with several community-based organizations.
One of those community organizations is the Chicano Federation. Nancy Maldonado is its president and CEO. I asked her what's behind the hesitancy among many in the Latinx community to ask for rental assistance.
Fear and mistrust is one concern, but I think there's a variety of factors at play.
Maldonado says plenty of renters in the community owe money, but many don't owe it to their landlord.
They either borrowed from friends and family or took out a loan or figured out a different way to come up with the money and pay their rent.
But Maldonado says the Chicano Federation still wants to help in any way they can.
Por favor de llamar a Chicano Federation. Aquí estamos para ayudarle, para poder... Si tienen algunas preguntas, aquí estamos para asistirlos y para servirlos. Si tienen algunas preguntas, por favor, llame a Chicano Federation para que podamos ayudarles.
You can also find help by going to covidassistance.sdhc.org. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Amazon is among the companies cashing in on people staying home for work and school during the pandemic. The online retailer just announced its profits for January through March. Compared to the same period in 2020, that number nearly tripled to $8.1 billion. Some of that money also comes from Amazon's cloud and ad business. Overall, Amazon did more than $108 billion in sales in the first quarter. One of the biggest names in entertainment and one of Southern California's biggest tourist attractions is officially back open. Disneyland and Disney California welcomed guests back for the first time in over a year. The theme parks were shut down early in the pandemic. SeaWorld, Universal Studios, and other theme parks have opened up in recent weeks, but Disneyland is the big one. Nicole Comstock caught up with neighboring businesses in Anaheim that rely on the Disney crowds.
Cash is finally flowing back into registers of the small businesses struggling to stay open around Disneyland. And on the eve of the theme park's grand reopening,
I swear to you, I'm doing cartwheels. You just don't see it.
Rick Kearney can't wait to feed the hungry crowds, but he expects far fewer customers than before the pandemic, since the resort is only open at 25% capacity.
And right now we're at 100% of zero. So anything is better than a zero, right?
He says it's going to take him at least 2 years to recoup his losses, and that's not so bad. 3 of the 8 small businesses in this strip mall on Catella and Harbor have already sold because they couldn't survive.
So I think the hotels are the same situation. Some of them might be bank owned now. You know, the owner might be gone. That's how bad it is.
We've been able to hold on.
Bharat Patel owns the Castle Inn Suites, a 200-room hotel his father built in 1989. On his first day back open, about a quarter of his rooms are booked.
We're very fortunate, so we're looking forward to better times.
He says profits won't pick up dramatically until out-of-state visitors are also allowed back into the park.
I am going to cry. I am overexcited.
Sabrina Duran just checked in. Her family has tickets for opening day. The SoCal native says Disneyland truly feels like their second home, and losing access to it brought her to tears.
Because we were annual pass holders and we lost it all.
So she's excited to get back to it Friday. These business owners are cautiously optimistic.
It's going to take a long time to get back to normal and make a basic living again.
Now I'm in a position to say that I need to hire. That's a good feeling.
That was Nicole Comstock reporting. San Diego Opera is staging its second drive-in event. The Barber of Seville wraps up a short run of performances at Pechanga Sports Arena's parking lot this weekend. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando has this preview of Rossini's delightful comic opera.
For the second time this season, San Diego Opera is building an outdoor stage at Pechanga Sports Arena's parking lot for a drive-in production. Last October, it staged La Boheme. But spring dictates something a little more upbeat, so it's turning to Rossini's The Barber of Seville, says conductor Bruce Stasna.
Rossini's great comedy, and it truly is, from the bel canto period. It sort of defines what comic Italian opera is in the early to middle 19th century.
Its roots may be in the 19th century, but the groovy costumes for this production inspired director Katura Sticken to do a little update.
Katura just told the cast in a meeting that we had earlier to sort of think of television during that area. And if we think of that, the strongest television moment she talked about was Laugh-In, particularly the cocktail hour in Laugh-In. Zany, lots of dancing, lots of color. So this is going to be a funny, fun, zany, colorful barber.
Rossini's opera, centering on the trickster Figaro, provides exactly the type of comedy to raise our spirits as quarantine restrictions begin to lift, says baritone David Pershall.
I mean, this is the champagne of opera. It's light, it's bubbly, everybody feels good after they have a glass. So I think it's going to be a balm for all of our soul here to experience something so fun.
Pershall sings the role of Figaro.
Well, this role is very technically demanding.
But Pershall relies on the conductor to help him overcome the challenges.
Bruce is very in tune with the language, with the timing of the staging, and he's very helpful. Now, for those that aren't aware, the conductor's job is to get the group of musicians that are playing in the pit as accompaniment and the singers all together, playing the right pitches at the right time. And this one in particular has to be timed well, not just with the voice, but also with the acting. You know, it takes a serious voice, but a lighthearted attitude. That's kind of what makes this piece so difficult.
I think it really has a lot to do with keeping yourself in the moment. In an outdoor venue, if a fire engine suddenly screams by, how is that going to interface with the characters on stage? Are they going to make an allowance for that for a moment? Are they not? Are they going to press forward? Whichever way it does go, I have to be poised and ready to adapt instantaneously.
That outdoor setting, coupled with pandemic restrictions, also present challenges.
And in particular, the orchestra area became denoted by a platform that was going to be installed that was 42 feet wide by 60 feet long. So once you have that defined area, then because of the pandemic, we had to look at the protocols in place. And so we are looking at spacing the instrumentalists according to whether they are masked players, violinists, or unmasked brass players and woodwind players. So the masked players, who they perform with their masks on, they have to have 6 feet of separation between each of the instruments. The woodwind and brass players, that's 12 feet. So then you have to take out your measuring tape and, well, how many players can you actually fit on a 42 by 60 foot orchestra platform? It's an enormous challenge. And the answer is 24.
The drive-in setting may not provide the pristine acoustics of an indoor venue, but it still creates a vital sense of community around live performance.
At the end of hopefully a great number, the horns go a-blazing and the lights flicker on and off to be, you know, this day and age's applause moment, and then we move forward. But there's a sense of community, which I think is an essential aspect of how the arts work.
Opera as an art form has weathered pandemics before, and San Diego Opera is meeting the challenges of this pandemic with some far-out innovation. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And that story is an example of the in-depth content provided by KPBS News. You can find all of our stories on the KPBS YouTube page. You can also stream KPBS podcasts and watch full episodes of KPBS Evening Edition. And that's all for this special edition of KPBS News. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and for all of us here at KPBS, thanks for joining us.